Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
And welcome to the GSMC Soccer Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Souza, and with me, of course, Jeff Malinoff. How you doing, Jeff?
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thanksgiving's right around the corner. I am starving for some food because I have refused to eat until Thanksgiving.
Yes, and, I was starving for some international soccer action this last week. And
Were you not disappointed?
I got my fill for sure. I even got seconds, you could say. We had the UEFA Nations League come to a close, at least for the group stage. We do have finalists for the Final Four that will take place in June of 2019. So in about 7 months.
A long time from now.
About 7 months, the 4 finalists that we'll look into. We'll see who actually comes out on top. I, so far, think that this tournament has been great. It has replaced meaningless international friendlies for the European countries. Gone are the days of a team like England playing against the Faroe Islands or England playing against, Kosovo, for example. And you're replacing these games with competition that's more suited for each nation. So, you look at these groups like in League A. And with the UEFA Nations League, if you're not familiar, it's broken up into 4 tiers. There's League A, League B, League C, League D. And there's a promotion relegation aspect to it, which is awesome. And you look at these tiers, for example, in Group 1 in League A, Holland, France, and Germany. I mean, those are 3 great nations right there. All 3 have extremely in-depth soccer history. And that's what you get in this kind of tournament. And for Europe, these games matter. They go far in terms of qualification is concerned for the Euro Cup. That's every 4 years, of course, like the World Cup. So these games do matter. So Jeff, do you have the standings pulled up here?
Yes, for League A, we have our finalists.
Well, let's go through the groups before
you want to go through the groups?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have Group 1 pulled up? Holland,
I do have
France?
Group 1, yes.
All right. So who topped that group?
In Group 1 of League A, there is Netherlands is the top one.
Yeah, and they had a injury time goal, which drew the game against Germany to give them their spot. They are one of the finalists. So Holland, I think the most unlikely team to win that group. They go through. They've been impressive. They were a team that didn't qualify for the last World Cup. They had to refocus their attention on future tournaments. And some of their young players like Virgil van Dijk really stepped up in this tournament. So,
and you want to hear someone that got relegated that I didn't expect to get relegated, and they were winless.
Germany.
Mm-hmm. Germany was I expected they had 2 draws and 2 losses, granted, but no wins. That just seems unlike them because they won the World Cup 2014.
Yeah, and then they had a terrible World Cup this last one, so they continue that run of bad form. They just a change of guard needs to happen in Germany.
Yeah. Of all the people in Group 1 to win, and 2 of the teams in Group 1 are both the World Cup champions of the last 2 World Cups. Mm-hmm. Netherlands will be the last team I would expect to win. Right.
So France will stay. Germany's relegated. They will move to to League B in the next round of UEFA Nations League, which is interesting. You wouldn't expect that. Germany has always been regarded as one of the top countries in the world for soccer, one of the pillars of international soccer. So let's take a look at Group 2. Do you have those results up?
For Group 2, yes, I do. In first, we got Switzerland.
Another surprise.
Yes. In second, we have Belgium. And in third, we have the relegated Iceland team.
Yeah. So Iceland, I feel like Iceland's pretty much everybody's second favorite international
Their
team.
goal differential was minus 12, which is pretty bad. 0-4.
Yeah, they lost all 4 games. They just got beat up and down. I mean, they are relegated for good reason. Switzerland, though, that has to be an upset. Belgium, another semifinalist for the last World Cup just a few months ago. You know, Belgium, they will remain in League A.
Well,
but
granted, for Belgium, they were tied in points. It just the tiebreaker gave the
Right.
edge to Switzerland. So it wasn't like Belgium really collapsed. It was just more of a just
Switzerland, yeah. Switzerland gets the goal differential on them. So Switzerland advances. All right, so let's go to Group 3 in League A.
Sure. I don't think it was very surprising. Portugal wins this one. Portugal is advancing to the Nations League finals.
Mm-hmm.
Second in staying is Italy, and the third team that gets relegated is Poland.
Yeah, and this was the easiest group. Portugal had won this group already before the last match day. They put out their kind of a change squad in their last game against Poland. The fate had been sealed for every team in this group, but Poland was relegated. They'll go down to League B. Portugal will be a semifinalist, and they're hosting. They're hosting the tournament. So the June
Talk about home field advantage.
The June semifinals will be in Porto, one of the most beautiful cities in the world, especially in Europe. So they will host. We don't know who is playing who yet, but they will be one of the 4. Italy stays. Italy had a good showing, in my opinion. This tournament, they're a team that missed the World Cup, a country that's kind of fallen on hard luck the last couple of years in international soccer. But I thought they played very well, and they played Portugal tough, even though they were not victorious. I thought they showed a lot of character and a lot of potential there. It looks like their team will be really well suited for the future, the upcoming future, that is. So let's move on to the last group in League A, and that is Group 4.
Yes. England takes home this one for Group 4, and who's staying is Spain, and who's relegated is Croatia. Mm-hmm. So I don't think that's surprising. I don't know what you think, but I don't think it's surprising.
No, England, again, one of the semifinalists for the World Cup. And, they are a team that seems to be ascending. They're a country that has a lot of good young players right now. It was easy to see why they'd win the group. Spain, they, an international power, but recently they haven't had the success. Guys like Xavi and Iniesta have since retired from the national team, and there has been a little bit of a step back, but they stay up as they remain. Croatia, though, they go down. Croatia, as you remember, Jeff, was second in the World Cup. They finished as second place behind France. They lost in the World Cup finals. But yeah, are you surprised to see them move to go down?
Not really. I think this was kind of how everyone's expected this group to go.
Yeah, it was a tough group. I think anybody could have saw in whatever order. Like, I think England could have been relegated to Spain, and no one would have been too shocked because it was a very strong group. All right, so let's go to League B in Group 1.
Oh, sure, we can go to League B.
Well, I guess before we do that, again, just to reiterate, the final 4 is England, Portugal, Switzerland, Holland. Those 4 teams will be playing for the UEFA Nations League finals. Mm-hmm. So, all right, let's go to Group B.
Well, it's the teams that are moving up to Group A or League A.
Let's just go Group 1.
Well, that's what I was saying. The team that was moving up is Ukraine, and who's staying in Group B for Group 1 is the Czech Republic, and then the relegated is Slovakia.
Yeah, no surprises here. Ukraine, Czech Republic, both decent teams. I don't know if maybe Czech Republic, some people thought would win, but I think Slovakia was always going to be third place in this group. But yeah, Ukraine will now ascend into League A. So they will be replacing one of the relegated teams. All right, so let's go to Group 2.
Great, glad to. Who's moving up? Sweden. Who's staying? Russia. Who's relegated? Turkey.
Yeah, this one came down on the final day.
Speaking of Turkey, no, okay, we won't talk about Thanksgiving. Sorry, had to.
This group came down on the final day. Sweden, they beat Russia, and they move up. Big win there. So they'll go up to group or League A, and they'll be replacing one of the relegated teams. Russia, following up on their strong World Cup, almost get promoted, but they will stay in League B.
Do you think that's disappointing for them? They couldn't get to the World. They couldn't win the World Cup, and they couldn't get to Group A.
No, I think.
Are they playing over their heads?
Yeah, I think if anything, the World Cup showed that there is a lot of controversy regarding their World Cup showing. Let's just put it that way.
There was. That was actually there wasn't an investigation.
Yeah, there was some interesting controversy there, but I think in terms of what world soccer fans look at, I don't think anybody's surprised that they didn't advance in their group this time here in the UEFA Nations League, although they gave Sweden a good run, but ultimately Sweden's a better team and they advanced. So let's move on to Group 3.
Sure. Bosnia is the one that moves up for them in Group 3. Mm-hmm. Austria takes staying neutral, and Northern Ireland is one that gets relegated.
Yeah, this one seems pretty cut and dry.
And we have another 0-4 team in Northern Ireland, which is not really surprising to me. I think they were not in the same league as either Bosnia or Austria in the first place.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Bosnia and Austria both, I think, were noticeably better than Northern Ireland, and the results kind of prove that. So
Bosnia went undefeated, 3-1-0.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Bosnia will go up, Northern Ireland down. All right, let's go to Group 4.
Okay. Denmark is promoted, Wales is neutral, and Republic of Ireland is relegated. So we got 2 Ireland teams that are relegated.
Yeah, Republic of Ireland following a disastrous UEFA Nations League.
Neither of them won a game, by the way. Northern Ireland or Republic of Ireland.
And Republic of Ireland is known as being the stronger side, and they had a very, very poor showing against Wales and Denmark. I thought it was a favorable group for them, but they will be relegated. Denmark promoted. Okay, so I don't really want to go through all the groups in League C and D, but Scotland, Finland, Norway, and Serbia will move up to League B. And then in League D, we have Georgia, we have Belarus.
Georgia's a state, sir. Just kidding.
Georgia, Belarus, Kosovo, and Macedonia will all move up to League C. So those teams will be moving up, and there's no relegation in League D. That's the lowest you can go. So no worries there for the teams that finish in last. But yes, the promoted teams to League A, Sweden, Bosnia, Ukraine, Denmark. The relegated teams from League A, Germany, Iceland, Poland, Croatia. Obviously, Germany is a notable team there that will be playing in League B. And that sounds weird, but it happens.
Yeah,
things happen.
But if you're looking at League A and the top and those 4 teams, Switzerland, Portugal, Netherlands, and England, I think the important thing is like Switzerland has the advantage over everyone with the most points. They have 9 points over 8, 7, 7. Do you think that'll play a factor or anything? Do you think they'll have momentum or anything like that?
No, I don't think so. Plus, we have to remember that the semifinals are in June. That's 7 months away. A lot of things will happen. Plus, a team like Portugal, Portugal played every game without Cristiano Ronaldo because he's on a break. So, like, they didn't even have their best player, and they cruised.
He'll probably be there in June.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll add him in June.
I don't know. I just think for Switzerland, being unexpectedly the highest points, and I think just confidence going in, maybe just feeling good about themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Holland, I think, is the team that's on the rise the most of the 4. I would say right now that Switzerland's probably the 4th best team if you're looking at power rankings.
And 3 of the teams in League A that made it had land at the end of theirs. England, Netherlands, Switzerland, Portugal land.
So those the finals will be in Porto again. So let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the U.S. men's national team. They've had a couple friendlies recently. They also have a coaching search that might be coming to a conclusion. We have news on that, and we'll talk about Rooney, his farewell international game, how that went. If he made an impact, if he scored, we'll talk about that. And also some changes that are expected in the MLS calendar, the scheduling, and the format might be changing soon. And we'll talk about these things in just a moment.
Are you looking to get your college football fix? Looking to get the latest news on your favorite school's team? The GSMC College Football Podcast is your ticket to all things college football. Join us as we talk college football from the national championship, the college rivalries, the bowl game, to the Heisman Trophy. To which conference is the best? We've got you covered for the Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, the Pac-12, ACC, and everything in between. Download the GSMC College Football Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
And welcome back to the GSMC Soccer Podcast. We just talked about the UEFA Nations League as the group stage wraps up. Talked about who's in, who's out, and all the movers and shakers in the tournament to date. Now, we'll focus our attention to the United States men's national team. They had a couple friendlies that they played in the last week. They played England, and then yesterday they played against Italy. Now, we know that the U.S. is in transition. They still don't have a permanent coach. They've had an interim coach, Dave Sarachan. And it sounds like his time as interim manager will be coming to an end shortly. But this last week wasn't the best in terms of results for the U.S. team. Do you have some updates on those scores there, Jeff?
Yeah, they had a game recently where they lost. Wow.
They played England last week.
Yeah, they and they got killed by England. And it was I think one of the main things about that game is it was Rooney's last appearance for the national team for England. And if you watch that game, he got a huge standing ovation. And it was kind of an emotional time in England. And just he's a legend in the world of soccer. And also he's playing in America, so people understood how the ramifications of that moment was. But he came in and I forget, it felt like it was like the 80th minute, something like that. Mm-hmm. And the game was already over by then. And by that point, he was just in there for, I guess, nostalgia.
Yeah, it's his farewell game. So It was already planned. Like he was going to come in later in the game, get his standing ovation, and then go on from there. And it was a nice sight to see. Rooney, as we know, he's been one of the best English national team players in their history, in a long lineage of great players. So he scored his first international goal, I think, at the age of 18 years old.
I think he's more well known for that bicycle kick he did.
For Manchester United?
Yeah, all those years ago. It felt like it's 10, 15 years ago?
It wasn't that long ago, actually.
It feels like it was a long, because it keeps getting played.
I'd say it was 5 years ago.
Was it?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like it's a lot longer, isn't it?
Yeah. Because he has moved on since then. He's played for 2 different clubs. He's played for Everton, and then he's played in the MLS at DC United.
But I think he's still just going to be remembered for his time with Manchester United.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's a Manchester United legend. They bought him from Everton. Everton was his boyhood club, which is cool. But they bought him. That's why he went back for 1 year to play for his boyhood club one more time.
And England did win against the U.S. men's national team 3-0. So it was already over by the time he got in the game. But it was, again, his farewell game. He wasn't supposed to do much. So
yeah. And talking about that game, the U.S., they've had a very youthful approach when it comes to how they approach these international friendlies. And we saw it again. Tim Weah, Julian Green, Will Trapp, Weston McKennie, of course, Christian Pulisic, Miazga. These guys are all very young. And we saw an English team who's very well-rounded, that has a lot of good players to choose from, really take it to the U.S. national team. But again, a youthful United States team against a more seasoned English squad coming off a semifinal appearance in the World Cup and a very good UEFA Nations League campaign. So how do you take this game if you're an American soccer fan? Do you take it in a positive light or a negative light?
Can you take a positive from not scoring 1 goal in 2 games?
Well, we haven't talked about the next game yet.
Well,
just
spoilers alert, they didn't score. But for this game, they're facing an elite team in England, and that's who they are. They're elite. There always will be. And I don't know. I would be just like, well, can I wish we put up more of a fight. It kind of felt like they weren't putting up a fight at the end of it.
They had good chances to score, but England had a 2-minute period where they scored twice, so that kind of changed the complexion.
After
of the
that,
game.
after that 2-minute period, it felt like they just gave up, though, didn't it? It just felt like
no, I don't think so,
demoralized.
because the U.S. came back strong. They had some chances to score. I mean, albeit not as many as England, but I thought that they countered well. I mean, they played a good game.
They're just, I hate to say it, but they're just inferior.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They're young. I mean, they're USA's putting out some really
I
young
hate to
teams.
I think it's more lines to say I think they're inferior just in general. The American soccer is to Europe teams because
some of them.
Yeah, but I just think the fact of the matter is soccer is not the main sport in America as it is in Europe, and I think that plays a big factor in the talent they get.
That plays a factor for sure. But we've seen USA squads beat big European countries. They've beaten Portugal. I mean, they've played with the likes of Germany. They've drawn England in a World Cup game. I mean, yes, I see what you're saying, but in terms of the squad now, I think this has been a good learning experience for them. Again, they're young players. They're playing on this international stage where they're playing against some of the best teams in the entire world. And we're talking about these guys, these young players, like Kellen Acosta, for example, getting minutes. Tyler Adams. Like, they're getting minutes in big matches against big teams. So you got to take it for what it is. So USA follows this England game up, and who did they play after that?
They played Italy.
They played Italy yesterday.
And they lost that one 1-0. So
they gave up a goal right at the very end of the game.
Yeah, it was kind of a heartbreaker, but again,
basically the last kick.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a kind of, I guess you can call it like a buzzer beater of sorts.
The U.S. was dominated throughout this game. Italy has been playing very well, a very good possession-based team, and they really took advantage of that with the U.S. They probably should have scored more goals. Ethan Horvath, you have to talk about him, the goalie for the United States. He's a young player. He plays for Club Brugge in Belgium. He had a standout performance, and I think that his performance yesterday is going to catch the attention of some of the big clubs in Europe because, man, he kept his team, the U.S. men's team, in that game for a lot longer than maybe he should have. He stopped many, many shots, a couple breakaways. Ultimately, Italy gets the goal, but at some point, a good team like that, with strikers like that, they're going to score. And they did. So, U.S. loses to Italy. Again, do you think that they take something from this game, or is it just disappointment?
I think you're right. The goalie is the one that takes the most from this. And I think he played a great game up until the end. And I think it's just like, okay, our defense can do well. Our defense can stop good teams. But we need to capitalize on defensive stops.
Yeah, I mean, at some point you have to attack, right? Like, you can't just play defense all game. But they did try a different formation out. They had 3 backs yesterday, more of like a 3-5-2 type of look, which is interesting because Italy's kind of known for that. But, yeah, I still take positives from this week. Even though they lose combined goals 4-0, I liked what I saw in bits and pieces. And that's what you get from young players. You get bits and pieces of positivity. You also saw a team that I think is lacking a little bit of direction because they don't really have a permanent head coach. And that's a nice transition into this next topic. So, United States men's national team, Greg Berhalter is said to be the front runner for head coach of the U.S. national team. It sounds like after the MLS season is over, they will make that announcement. That's speculation. It's not something that they said, that the Federation actually came out and said, but he is the coach of Columbus Crew, a former U.S. international player. Although, yesterday a news story came out, Grant Wall, U.S. soccer reporter, said that the latest Real Madrid manager to get fired, Julian Lopetegui, reached out to the United States to give his interest in the job. Are you surprised to hear that the former Spanish and former Real Madrid coach here, he coached both those teams in the last 6 months, were you surprised to hear that he was interested in the U.S. national team job?
Yes, because it just feels like he could get a much better job, doesn't it? Don't you think?
I mean, he got fired from Spain and Real Madrid pretty quick.
Unfairly, kind of.
Which one?
Touche.
Because, I mean, I understand Spain, like, they fired him the day before the World Cup, but he also went behind their back and took another job while he was...
That one, yeah, but, like, Real Madrid, he didn't really get a chance to really do anything. After losing Ronaldo, you gave him such a short leash after losing the best scorer in the world.
Yeah, but their new coach has this team scoring a lot of goals and winning games. So
True.
Real Madrid were setting some really bad club records when he was their coach for the first 14 games. So yeah, you could say it's early, but it's Real Madrid. They're ruthless. I mean, they're not going to wait around and let a coach figure it out. It's like you had 14 games and you're making us look like this is the worst season that we've had in a long time. So it's kind of justifiable in terms of their standards. It just depends on how you look at it.
Mm-hmm. But I guess for the men's national team, anything will be an upgrade, and he can definitely be an upgrade.
Well, he won't be an upgrade because they told him that they are not interested because they are too far along in their coaching search.
Of course they did.
So he will not be the U.S. men's national team head coach, but Greg Berhalter sounds like he will be. That is the speculation. I do expect that announcement to be made here in the next month or so. Speaking of which, the MLS, we're now in the final four teams of the MLS playoffs. They took a break because of the international break. They didn't want players leaving their club teams. But we are in the semifinals of the MLS. And it brings to light a subject worth discussing, and that is the MLS is considering changing the scheduling so the league ends before this international break, because this international break happens every single winter, in November. There are multiple international breaks throughout the year, but this one interferes with the current MLS schedule. Do you think it's in the best interest of the MLS to end their season, figure out their playoffs and championships before going into a 2-week break? Because it just breaks up the playoffs. It's like in the way, you know?
Well, it's kind of like in the NFL, they have the Super Bowl in 2 weeks.
Yes.
A 2-week span, so it's like maybe, but I understand why there's still international stuff in between, like they don't do that in other sports. So I understand where you're coming from, but what can you do?
Well, what they can do and what they're thinking about doing is changing the scheduling. Maybe they're starting the league a little bit earlier or reducing the number of playoff games, and they've discussed this. Part of this proposal is they will reduce the playoff matches. Instead of a home and home, it'll be a 1-game playoff. That is something that's on the table, to reduce the number of playoff games. But in terms of breaking up the playoffs, do you think it breaks up the momentum when you have 3 weeks of playoffs and then you go on a 2-week international break and then you come back and finish the last 2 weeks?
I'm taking a lot of these guys will be exhausted by that point.
That's another thing too, right? Like some of these players are traveling home to go play for their countries and then they're coming back. So there's a risk of injury there. There's fatigue, not just running wise, but flying. Some of these players play in different countries, like in Europe. Some of them play. They're playing matches in Europe. For example, the MLS players playing for the U.S. national team. that played in friendlies. They had to play these games in both these games in Europe. So we'll see if anything changes. And I think by our next episode, we may know a little bit more regarding that. But I think that's it for our show today. Jeff, you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we covered it. I think we covered everything we wanted to talk about. And congratulations to the teams that made it to the finals of the UEFA Nations League. Mm-hmm. And we hope for the best.
Yeah, all right. So thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.